Hi guys, it's the GCS Connect Leaders Series, and we're here with two people from Arabesque AI today. We have Yasin Rosowsky, who is the co-CEO of Arabesque AI, and Gemma Chambers, who is the Head of AI Operations. This is a big moment because we are first ever two people from one company. So we've talked about the strategy, talked about the logistics of it, so I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. Just to introduce the series, GCS is a technology recruitment agency. We are really trying to build a global technology recruitment network, which is linking expert talent to innovative companies, of which Arabesque AI and Arabesque themselves are definitely one. And the Leaders Series and GCS Connect is our way of building that community. So the Leaders Series, we speak to leaders and technology leaders, people that we feel are really driving forward the technology world, and get them to understand what they're doing, how they're reacting to the current business, technology and economic climate. And we're really pleased to have two people from one of the most innovative companies that we at GCS work with today. And I know they've, it will be coming out in around the start of March. And one of the things we're going to be talking about is developing their new product, bringing new software into the market at this point. So I know that's been a big project for them over the last few years. So it's really great to kind of find out more about that. But obviously that's myself introducing. I'm sure these guys can do a better job. So Yasin, do you just sort of take us through a little bit about the type of product, the type of kind of company, the type of AI that you guys are producing? It'd be very good to kind of find out about that.
Oh, great. Thank you very much for having me and Gemma on the series.
No problem.
It's a great pleasure. Yeah. So maybe I'll just give you an overview about Arabesque, and then I'll delve deep into Arabesque AI and what Arabesque AI does within the Arabesque group. So Arabesque itself is a collection of three financial and technology companies.
Sure.
Our overall mission as a group is around sustainability and mainstreaming sustainable finance. We believe that capital markets and capital allocation is a great instrument, a great way to move forward and implement and deliver on the sustainable objectives that are so common now and talked about so much in the wider society. So we're three essential companies. One is Arabesque Asset Management. This is what we started with around 7 years ago now, when it spun out followed from a management buyout from Barclays. And that mission is about taking sustainability data, taking quantitative investment processes, bringing those together to deliver sustainable investment products for its clients. During that process, two other companies came out of Arabesque. One of them Arabesque AI, which I'll talk about in a second, but another one called Arabesque AI, which is our ESG data business. And this is really about empowering the industry and the stakeholders and the main players in this space with the data and the understanding of companies and their sustainability. So it's an ESG data provider, which is giving you a whole platitude of different information and scores and metrics on the sustainability of companies, which really allows investors and asset owners, etc., to make very much better informed decisions about sustainable investment and incorporating sustainability within their business models as well. So that's one side. So we have the asset management, which is essentially bringing sustainability data with quantitative tools and coming up with investment products. We have our ESG data business. And then we have Arabesque AI, which was very recently, it was just over a year ago now, end of 2019, where we spun out from Arabesque Asset Management. We were the AI research team within there working on this artificial intelligence engine for forecasting the financial markets. But we spun out at the end of 2019. There was some interested parties. Eventually, DWS, one of Europe's largest asset managers, took a 25% or almost 25% stake in us. But we're all part of the Arabesque group in whole. Work very closely together with our asset management and our S-Ray. All our sustainability data comes from Arabesque S-Ray, our ESG data business. And the purpose of Arabesque AI is about making investment decisions using artificial intelligence as the main instrument for evaluating and coming up with understanding the behaviors and underlying patterns in the financial markets, coming up with future outlooks into that, which are then fed into investment and portfolio construction technologies, which be able to build portfolios and products for their clients based on whatever kind of customized criteria or investment objectives, or of course sustainability objectives they have. So it's bringing together essentially AI and investment strategy design and research, and then bringing that together with sustainability, bringing these three components together to really build the kind of best kind of products for our clients.
And that's really interesting. I think, you know, as a recruiter, as a technology recruiter, we hear a lot about AI, and we hear a lot about, you know, the kind of the word itself overall is fintech, and how that links back in. Is when you've developed this product, is it something that you have built completely from scratch? So how have you looked at the AI, and what have you based the decision-making process on? Because I think that's really quite interesting. You know, where do you build it from?
Yeah, no, exactly, and this is one of the biggest kind of challenges, because this is a very new space. If you're applying AI, or it's largely about applying different machine learning like algorithms, which is a subset of artificial intelligence. If you're really generally doing this from scratch, there isn't generally complete systems in the sense of that you can just take off the shelf solutions. Now, we leverage a lot open source technologies, existing academic algorithms, etc., and papers, of course, and we utilize that a lot. But our system isn't just taking in some data, putting it into an off-the-shelf algorithm, or a kind of tuned or slightly modified algorithm, and coming up with a prediction. It's a larger system, which we spent years and years in R&D. We spent 3-4 years now in R&D in building this system. It's in the end, the whole training system runs on 20 to 30,000 cores simultaneously across 6-7 different data centers spread around Europe, consuming terabytes and terabytes of data to train the system. So there's a massive engineering effort to applying AI. So it doesn't just come down to a kind of data science application, or data science kind of approach or implementation. You really need the engineering side to get there. So if you take the very much kind of deep research approach, which is the direction we've gone, where we really kind of study the kind of academic literature, we understand the models we're using from a very baseline theoretical first principles approach. It's very easy to go down, and the challenge is that you go down rabbit holes, essentially. So how do you kind of bring that back into something which is delivered?
Real world, I guess.
Yeah, the real world, and something which can actually be implemented and applied and tested and evaluated. So it's very important to have the freedom, the intellectual curiosity and intellectual freedom to have that, but have very clear scope.
Yeah, and Gemma, how does your role fit into this project overall?
So my role is to do all the sort of running the business in the background, effectively. Okay. So as head of operations, I'm sort of the entire operations team. So I'll liaise with all the sort of traditional central functions on HR, legal, strategy, planning, recruitment, etc. So from my perspective, the research and technology teams are driving the product forward, and I'm making everything tick in the background, and making sure we're keeping to deadlines. We've got all of the paperwork to support what we're doing. We're facilitating all of those client relationships with all that sort of stuff that happens in the background that the technology and product teams are less interested in, and making sure that from a legal, HR, tax, finance perspective, it's all working effectively.
Is there a lot of kind of legal kind of elements to this when you're dealing with kind of financial data? Do you have to deal with it in a certain way?
Well, I mean, firstly, what we're doing is novel. So
yeah, that's what I'm really interested in, because if you think about it, you know, it is something that you're inventing from scratch. That's what I'm really quite interested in. You know, there's never been done before, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that complicates all sorts of things, from the way we're treated from a VAT perspective as providing a service, to what regulatory category we fall into. Within all of those different things, we're having to reach out to experts. We can't possibly have all that knowledge already within our team. So we're having to work with IP advisors and specialists in tax to try and understand how we form these services and deliver these services in a way that's never been done before. So we can't really take an off-the-shelf approach. So it means that everything is a little bit more complicated and takes a little bit longer to work out. Yeah,
and it's coming up now to you know, around the time that we're going to be releasing this, it will be coming down to the kind of first release of the product. Is that something you're both very excited by? I guess it must be.
Yeah, definitely. So we've been working. So essentially, what we've been building over the last half of last year was a front-end application to interact with our AI system and portfolio construction system. So we have this, you know, wealth of research, wealth of R&D, building investment strategies, but being able to actually build a kind of front-end application which allows our clients, it's B2B business in Arabesque AI, to be able to go and configure their own investment strategies and be able to, you know, see what happens if they want to build the same kind of strategy but in a different region. So they want to build an Asia Pacific strategy versus the US versus the Nordics, kind of a long short or a market neutral, etc. So if they want to, you know, build all these different types of strategies, we wanted to build them a kind of good user experience in terms of configuring those. The product is largely targeted at you know, investment professionals in you know, business B2B. So we're not going directly to the client, and that's where Arabesque Asset Management comes in for us and our other kind of parties that we deal with. But yeah, so we're very excited to release this. It's currently in beta phase right now, being tested and evaluated and iterated on. And yeah, it allows you to interact with all the underlying AI systems and investment portfolio construction technologies in this one centralized, uniformed web app.
Fantastic. And I mean, first off to say, I hope you know how hard you guys have worked on it, and we've had people kind of working with you on it as providing resource. But you know, first off, you know, good luck. You know, I'm sure it'll be a great success. When you have developed this, I mean, we're going to go more into the research and the tech stack. But I think one of the key things that we talk about as a recruiter is resource and talent. How has it been running? You know, obviously the core part of this project has been in the last 12 months, and I don't know how you were set up before with regards to remote working, etc. But how has it been leading that team for both of you really in the last 12 months in a completely remote environment when you've got deadlines to hit? Has there been benefits? Has there been challenges of it? How has that been?
I'd say there's a mix of challenges and benefits, etc. I mean, I wouldn't say there's benefits, it's more kind of challenges and how we overcame those challenges. I don't think that's hurt us at all from our kind of, but we've had to change, we had to make changes, of course. We were quite fortunate that just before all the lockdown and everything that happened, we had moved our complete IT system, or the vast majority of anything to do with actual development work and our day-to-day work, off a kind of localized on-premise server-based system. So we were actually issued all with new laptops, which were completely, essentially, off-grid from our on-premise systems, just at the beginning of February. So it was very easy for us to transition from a remote to a remote working environment. Actually, essentially nothing changed when we switched over to a remote working environment. So I think there are, some of the issues are kind of standard across any kind of workplace. The fact that people are not liking having to stay indoors all the time, missing the connections, etc. But we put in a lot into place, and I think we've done quite a good job, and I think the team will say so on this side, by making sure that there was always contact. So one of the things that we did immediately was to have every day, everyone in the team gets together. There's always a call around 10 o'clock in the morning with the whole team. It is optional in the sense that if you have other meetings that you need to attend, but that's always there. And it's it's to take the space of the fact that when you're in the office, you would have coffee chats, lunch chats with your colleagues, etc. So sometimes those conversations they can be anything from formal. There are announcements that need to be made, or work items that need to be discussed, to informal, when it's talking about the weather or the football, what was on TV last night, depending on what's needed. But there's always that time where everyone gets together, and that was very critical. We also made sure that we carried on with our socials, monthly socials, made sure those carried on. One of the things that we implemented is making sure that we over our communication channels, so we use Slack a lot. Massively use that, making sure that we celebrate achievements, and really kind of call out achievements on that. I think one of the biggest challenges wasn't with the existing team, because already there was a very close kind of working culture with the whole team. It was onboarding new colleagues. So I think they work so we had to smooth up and make it efficient very much our onboarding system, make that very simple. And we put a lot of effort and energy into making sure that the people are onboarded as quickly as possible. One of the main challenges is that while new employees, with the people they work with very closely, are very close with the wider team where they have less interaction, you have to put things in place to try and make sure that they're interacting with the wider team. Otherwise, they can kind of get lost with just interacting with the 1 or 2 or 3 people they generally interact on a working level. So another thing that we introduced was like chat roulette, for example. Where,
okay.
Yeah, twice a week you were randomly assigned. We had various incarnations of that until we got something that worked. But
we're not up to the AI, is not up to the intelligence that it can play the roulette as well, is it yet, Yasin? Probably working out all the different outcomes. And Gemma, when you're looking at talent now, bringing it in, are you changing the types of people that you're looking for?
I mean, I think one of the reasons that the AI team works so well together is because we do have a really stringent recruitment process. Like, everybody has to be on board with the candidate, and we're never looking for somebody who's just ticked the boxes in education or work. And that hasn't changed now. I mean, we're looking always for people that have gone above and beyond and are doing something in their own time in their sphere that they're interested in. And I think, if anything, now that sort of emphasis on that point is more than ever before, because people have got all this extra time. And I think we're going to see a lot more candidates that have things like changes in career paths, because a lot of people have reskilled, and we're seeing that quite a lot in the candidates over the last year. And actually that's really helpful to us, especially when we look at things like business development. Having somebody that's got business development, but also actually over the last year has had a dabble at coding, or taught themselves something new, or done a lot of research on AI, things that you wouldn't typically be able to do in your day-to-day when you've got a commute you're factoring in. So I think it's not that we've necessarily changed our approach, but we are expecting more from that added value and that extra work that people are putting in. I think in terms of the recruitment process, we're just trying to make it as personable as possible. And right now we've got an insane amount of candidates coming through the door, but the last thing we want to do is have a really blanket approach to everybody, because we're just cognizant that people are going through a hard time. This is not easy. Everyone is at home, some of them alone with their own thoughts all day. So for us, it's not necessarily about looking for different candidates, but just making sure that the process is as nice and as bearable as it can be. We all know that interviewing is horrible as it is, let alone in this kind of scenario.
Yeah, we from some of the leaders' conversations we've had of talking about the importance of communication during the process, and we know this, and keeping people up to date. And another question I had for both of you, because obviously, when you're coming up to a software launch, and I know because I've worked in this industry supplying people, it becomes like the last 10 minutes of a football match. Everyone's running around. And one of the things we've talked about this year is that disconnecting element as well, where people, I think the worry of a leader or a CEO or a manager would be that people wouldn't do any work. But actually, it's turned out that people just can't stop working. How do you actually say, look, I know that we've worked with these deadlines, but we need to, take a day off now. How do you deal with that?
I mean, we particularly struggle with that.
Yeah, I'm sure we all do, actually. We're probably our own worst critics. But yeah.
It's fine as you speak. But genuinely, I mean, we do really enjoy what we're doing. And I mean, we're not a salaried organization, we're all in for the broader mission of the business. I think that does always make you work that extra mile, because it's part of this company is all of ours. It's between the employees, right? But in terms of how you can overcome that, I mean, firstly, it's got to lead by example. Sure. I mean, when any of the leaders are taking time off, advocate that time off, shout about it, say, I'm taking time away to do X, Y, Z. I'm not going to be contactable. I think, I mean, there's no better way than that, the sort of setting example. And to be honest, I mean, when we got to Christmas last year, Yasin and the leadership team we stood up and said, look, everyone, you've worked incredibly hard this year. We have achieved exactly what we wanted to achieve. We want you to take some downtime.
Brilliant. That's really good. Yeah.
Let's not push ourselves and overcommit to deadlines around this time. I want you all to take a step back. If you've got loads of holiday left, take that holiday. Let's use this time for discussions about our strategy and broader ideas rather than, the daily grind. And I think you do have to say it. I think you have to over communicate it, because people they do have that tendency to just squirrel away. There's nothing else to do right now. So I think a lot of people are just working, and you're seeing it impact mental health without people even realizing it. You're going to have burnout. So I think absolutely, like you say, over communicate it, lead by example, and in a way you kind of have to force people's hand as well to make them take that time. Yeah.
Well, I'm obviously not listening to my own advice, because I've taken a day off today. I was telling you earlier, I've taken a day off today to have a socially distant walk with my father-in-law, which I believe is allowed. If anyone's listening to this and I've broken the rules, then I'll get them to edit it out. But we've done a 17-mile walk, but I've come back and done this because I enjoy doing it. So it's not like work, talking to interesting people like yourselves. But yeah, no, it's definitely. It's a key learn, I think, for all managers, for all leaders, is that people genuinely work really, really hard without managers, don't they? You don't actually need to tell people what to do. They're enjoying it, they'll do it.
Yeah, exactly. And as Gemma says, I think if there's a purpose, there's a clear kind of objective, a goal that we're striving for. And it's very clearly define what your role is, how you're contributing to that overall mission, overall objective, and then I think this is the most important thing for the team. It doesn't matter, what kind of processes that you put in place, etc. If people have that drive, they have that understanding, that motivation, they can see exactly how what they're working towards, why, and how it's going to contribute and make a difference. And especially with Arabesque, our mission overall about sustainability, we know that even though we are very concentrated on the AI research side of things, we know the end application of our system will be used in a way to benefit society, benefit investors, and progress sustainability.
So just for lay people, as it were, or maybe just for my own benefit. When we talk about sustainability, what we're talking about is ethical investment. It's making sure that the things that you're investing in are ethical. Is that right?
No, well, yes, one large aspect. but there's lots of other aspects of sustainability. So one of the most applied aspects of sustainable investing is ESG, environmental, social, and governance, where you're looking at aspects of a company's behavior and actions and what they do on different kind of non-financial metrics. So you have the standard kind of financial metrics like, you know, profit, loss, sales, debt, R&D expenditure, etc. But you have a lot of other metrics which are now coming into foreplay, which are, you know, environmental, water usage, how they treat their employees, how they deal with health and safety, governance
diversity, things like that, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this, you know, there is a whole bunch of analysis which sits on top of that, which finds out what are these sustainability metrics or metrics which are largely associated with sustainability, I should say. How do they impact the materially impact this company from a financial perspective? And there's plenty of studies. I mean, Arabesque itself has done a study with Oxford University several years back on the impact of sustainability and financial performance. And it's the biggest thing now in finance right now. Everything is ESG investing, from equity space to the fixed income space. So it's about making investment decisions where you're taking this into account. And then there's all the other aspects, because, you know, in terms of the stakeholders, should you only care about certain stakeholders? So that's talking about the environmental impact and the society around you, because these things do have costs. And this is where it all becomes very much, there's lots of academic literature about this, you know, these costs which are essentially transported to somewhere else, but they eventually come back.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I've read a book called Conscious Capitalism. I don't know if you've read that. I mean, that's kind of a bit of a thought leader on that, when they really talk about, I think it's the guy that Fresh Foods or something. I'll post it in the link when we do it, but it's definitely something that a lot of our managers, our companies are thinking about. Going into the product itself, thinking about AI, and I know you've talked about the fact that it's not just a data-driven, it learns. But I would assume that building data on things that aren't numbers and zeros and facts, i.e. money, makes the job a lot harder, makes the actual AI product itself more difficult to build.
Yeah, so predicting in the financial space, you know, predicting equities, stocks, etc., is probably one of the hardest areas to predict in. And there's something called non-stationarity. That means basically that the relationship's always changing over time and breaking down. Plus, there's a lot of noise in the underlying data, a ridiculous amount of noise actually. That's because you have a lot of impartial information. So it's extremely challenging, and that's what kind of draws the team at Arabesque AI a lot. It certainly drew me into this space. It's two things. One is the intellectual challenge of this. It's such a difficult space, but it's also a space where the application of your algorithms, essentially, that you develop, are very easily kind of realized and applied. You can see how to apply them, i.e. if your system decides to predict that, you know, being very simplistic, it doesn't necessarily work like this, but predict that the Apple stock price is going to go up in X months or X weeks or whatever, then it's the economic activity that subsequently follows that is quite clear what to do. You can see how that forms a business. Whereas one of the challenges in lots of other spaces, that's a very interesting technology is developed, but then the kind of how you apply that from a business perspective, how that makes economic sense is not very clear. So I guess those two things, it's very intellectually challenging, very intellectually rewarding. At the same time, applying it and seeing how to apply it from an economic perspective is very clear and straightforward.
And this obviously comes up, because I know obviously you've done a PhD up to that level in university, and I believe you've come from university to move into Arabesque. Is this the culmination of work that you did in your academic career, and you brought it forward from there?
Yeah, I've been doing this kind of thing since on the side since I was in my undergrad, actually. So I remember once buying an old server because it's all I could afford, to run some high frequency algorithm that I created, which I hadn't taken into account when you actually reapply concepts like slippage in the financial market. So before actually testing it, the simulation looked very promising. Then when I really tested it, this was when I was an undergrad. Yeah, and also worked very closely with my co-CEO. So I'm a co-CEO of Arabesque AI, which is an entity within the Arabesque group. So the other co-CEO is a guy called Qasim, who we used to work on this together. So we did our undergraduates together at UCL and PhDs at UCL together, and then joined Arabesque together. And now we run Arabesque AI together. So yeah, we were building all this kind of stuff for many years. But I would say it really got very serious, several years ago, when we were given the mandate to go off and research and build an AI system for forecasting.
Do you feel that technology has caught up with you? I mean, obviously there's constant realignment and innovation in technology. Is it easier to do now what you're trying to do as opposed to 10 years ago, or was the technology there then?
Definitely easier, for sure. I think the models we're applying a lot more deep learning, so a lot of that is some of the recent advancements in that is new, though the underlying kind of theory or the basis of that's quite old. But yeah, the technology has definitely been a differentiator. The fact that we can spin up 20,000, 30,000 cores, it's just unimaginable before the era of kind of cloud computing, and just run our systems to train, because our system is there's kind of unique models are kind of trained for each different kind of sector and different country and different region and different data characteristics, etc., with different target variables. So we have a massive computational kind of burden, which the more that we can parallelize, which allows us for our R&D system to be a lot more kind of efficient, etc.
And what is the tech stack you're using, just so we know for the programmers watching? What would you say is the best things to use for this?
I think if you could pinpoint one thing, you'd say Kubernetes. If you are strong in Kubernetes, then you'll understand containerization and Dockers. You'll understand kind of all the different tech stacks that we use. Some large spaces is Python. We do a little bit, or doing a little bit now in Go. Most of the team have experience, because most of the team, research team anyway, are PhDs, so they have a lot of experience in kind of C and C++ when optimization of algorithms is needed. There's a lot of support on that side of things anyway already, so we don't do too much of that anymore. Different database technologies. So we use cloud storage. We use a lot of. We're moving off P-SQL, going to graph databases like dgraph. It's going to be a big thing for us. All the GCP stack. We use cloud functions. We like the concept of serverless architecture. So when we can go serverless, we go serverless, and so on and so on.
And are you driven? In doing this, I know it's important to give back to the community, the ESG element. Is that what drives you forward, or is it the technology elements of it to kind of make a working system? What gives you your passion around this, Yasin?
I mean, the sustainability is something that makes me very happy. I guess the internal drive or motivation on a day-to-day basis around the technology and the research. We're very technology heavy, very research focused and heavy. And it's just trying to increase the accuracy, making our system more intelligent. So one of our core research missions and strategy is around general artificial intelligence. So maybe general artificial intelligence is 20, 30, 40, 50 years away, but that's what we want to try and achieve. That's what we want to work towards. That's where we measure the quality of our research, and that's where it kind of guides the priorities and the overall research strategy. So we don't focus on, say, one specific, investment strategy and just hone on that, try to make that the best thing ever. We have a very much more kind of broader, more generalized approach to building our underlying investment strategies, which is to essentially work on this underlying the intelligence of the underlying system and its ability to forecast. And so when we're assessing our system, evaluating through our R&D processes, we're evaluating across a wide variety of different countries, emerging markets, developed markets, different kind of strategies. So we're making sure that we're seeing that our system is the best test to see how generalized the system is, how it's not kind of just being overfitted and just works in one very niche corner of area. And we think that's it's a much better kind of scientific methodological process to making sure that our system is robust and scalable.
And I mean, again, from a layperson's perspective, once you build this system, does it continue to learn? Will it do things that will surprise you, or is that a bit too science fiction?
Well, we're still in the narrow AI space, as is pretty much everyone else. So, what that means is that we rely on statistical algorithms to learn from past data. So largely machine learning algorithms, which are just consuming just a lot larger amount of data than you would have kind of 10, 15 years ago, with much more powerful computational performance. So yeah, our algorithms can't decide, hey, Yasin, I'm bored today, or I'm taking a day off.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna go read a book or go play golf or something.
Or read all the books.
So yeah. Our system hasn't reached that level of intelligence.
So we don't have to deal with it in an HR perspective, then, Gemma.
Yeah.
No, thank goodness. Can you imagine all of the tricks?
That's right. Yeah. And just kind of coming into the kind of the elements of that. I mean, I think it's been a super, interesting kind of conversation, and one that, I'd love to do a part 2 and find out in a kind of month's time how this starts going. But where I'd leave it with you is, if you're a potential client of Arabesque watching this, for both of you, what can this tool, what can Arabesque AI bring to your business? What are the key elements? I'll go to yourself first, Yasin.
I think it's one of the key things is the being able to customize very quickly. So we're talking about in a matter of hours, and build and test and evaluate an investment strategy really tailored to kind of what your investment objectives and your sustainability objectives are. And usually, if you want to kind of customize investment strategy, first off, you need to, it's a lot of investment you have to put in. You might have to put 6 months time into an R&D, where the results are a bit uncertain. So it's about making that whole pipeline, that process, that whole R&D, building your investment strategy process, just a lot more efficient. And I guess the key thing is that this isn't just what you call a passive investment strategy, where it's just following an index, where that process can be very efficient, and there is quite a few elements of customization around that. But it has this active part, this AI part, which is playing the role of kind of sitting there, making decisions, thinking where it thinks the market's going to go. So making these kind of active forecasting and what you call alpha generating decisions. And that's a differentiating factor. And the fact that, but I think the core thing is that we have this scientific methodological approach to this driven towards general AI. So this research team and research process, which is just constantly day in, day out, looking to make the system more and more intelligent. And it's just constantly under active R&D. I mean, I just calculate how many versions were released this year. We're currently 2.3, and really on every 2 months we have a new version. We'll have 4 or 5 more versions by the end of the year. So it's pretty exciting stuff where we're going into the future. That's what I'd be excited for the future.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Gemma, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I didn't come from an asset management background, I haven't come from an AI background, but what we've created is something that anyone can sort of understand. I mean, what sits behind the engine is, I can't even fathom the complexity. We've got this amazing team of highly intelligent individuals that have built these amazing machine models, and at the front of it sits something so simple, this web app that little old me who's never had experience in this industry can still go around and navigate it and build a custom strategy based on terminology I understand. It's not, you're not going in and being bamboozled every second by a different question that you would have to have all this technical knowledge about. It's just, it's very logical, it's very intuitive. And I think that's a huge part of what we offer.
Fantastic. And I think that's, you know, a real credit to you guys. It sounds like a lot of passion there, and that's what we look for in recruiters, and I know you guys look for within your businesses. What you've got to do next, Yasin, is you've got to move on to Recruitment AI. That'll be the next one. So you can have, you know, Recruitment Consultancy AI. I'm sure that'll be even more research to do. But it's been great to speak to you today. Thank you very, very much for your time. Great, good luck with the launch. I'm sure it'll be a real success, and maybe it'd be great to kind of catch up with you guys in 2 to 3 months to see what you've learned in the kind of the release phase and that sort of thing. But thank you very much, guys, and have a great day.
Thanks so much, David.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.